Hi, this is Andre, and thanks for checking out Synthisophy. Synthisophy is integrating the wisdoms of history based on fact and truth into our present culture. Let's take a look today at Chapter 5, Argumentative Theory. What is argumentative theory? Argumentative theory was proposed by these two gentlemen, Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber. What is argumentative theory? Argumentative theory is a concept proposed by these gentlemen in their article that they published, Why Do Humans Reason? Arguments for an Argumentative Theory. Here is their abstract from that article. Quote, reasoning is generally seen as a means to improve knowledge and make better decisions. However, much evidence shows that reasoning often leads to distortions and poor decisions. This suggests that the function of reasoning should be rethought. Argumentative theory claims that the function of reasoning is argumentative. It is to devise and evaluate arguments intended to persuade. Reasoning is adaptive given the exceptional dependence of humans on communication and their vulnerability to misinformation. Skilled arguers are not after the truth, but after arguments that support their views. This explains the notorious confirmation bias. This bias is apparent not only when people are actually arguing, but also when they are reasoning proactively from the perspective of having to defend their views. Reasoning so motivated can distort evaluations and attitudes and allow erroneous beliefs to persist. Proactively used reasoning also favors decisions that are easy to justify, but not necessarily better. In all these instances, traditionally described as failures or flaws, reasoning does exactly what can be expected of an argumentative device. Look for arguments that support a given conclusion. End quote. Here's another quote from an article titled From a Conversation with Hugo Mercier. There is stated, reasoning was not designed to pursue the truth. Reasoning was designed by evolution to help us win arguments. That's why they call it the argumentative theory of reasoning. So as Mercier and Sperber put it, the evidence reviewed here shows not only that reasoning falls quite short of reliably delivering rational beliefs and rational decisions, it may even be, in a variety of cases, detrimental to rationality. Reasoning can lead to poor outcomes, not because humans are bad at it, because they systematically strive for arguments that justify their beliefs and their actions. This explains the confirmation bias. End quote. Note that our legal system of trial by jury is itself based on argumentative theory. Arguments are presented by lawyers for the plaintiff, arguments presented by lawyers for the defendant, and then the jury decides guilt or innocence. The other two scientists published powerful studies on confirmation bias as well and on argumentative theory. And those two social scientists are Charles Lord and Irving Janis. Let's talk about Charles Lord first. Biased assimilation and attitude polarization, the effects of prior theories on subsequently considered evidence. That is the title to an article presented in a respected journal. In a landmark experiment, Lord and colleagues in 1979 asked participants who had been previously selected as being either defenders or opponents of the death penalty to evaluate studies relating to its efficiency as a deterrent. The studies given to the participants had different conclusions. While one seemed to show that the death penalty had a significant deterrent effect, the other yielded the opposite result. Even though the methodologies of the two studies were almost identical, the studies that yielded a conclusion not in line with the participants' opinions were consistently rated as having been much more poorly conducted. In this case, participants used reasoning not so much to assess the studies objectively as to confirm their initial views by finding either flaws or strengths in similar studies, depending on their conclusion and their preconceived bias. Janis, in 1972, recognized the fallacy of reasoning in his work on group confirmation bias. He observed that the groups of academically brilliant government officials would make horrible mistakes that were actually compounded by their being in groups. people like Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense under Kennedy and Johnson, and more recently, Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush, come to mind. They are people who, despite their academic brilliance, reason poorly, yet were able to persuade many by their false arguments. Here's a quote from Psychology Today, October 25th, 2018, titled, "Why People Ignore Facts. When it comes to reasoning, identity trumps truth." Quote, "Belonging in a particular political party can also shape our perception. In one study, participants were asked to watch a video of protesters. Half the participants were told the people in the video were protesting the military's don't ask, don't tell policy. The other half were told that the people were protesting at an abortion clinic. Liberals reported saying the protesters were more violent and disruptive if they were told that they were watching abortion clinic protesters. And the opposite was true for conservatives. The protesters at the abortion clinic were reported less violent and disruptive, even though everyone was watching the exact same video." Why does political identity shape our thinking and perception so dramatically? NYU psychology professor J. Van Bavel explains the results of studies like these with his identity-based model of political belief. His quote is, "Oftentimes the actual consequences of particular party positions matter less to our daily lives than the social consequences of believing in these party positions. Restated, our desire to hold identity-consistent beliefs often far outweigh our goals to hold accurate beliefs. This may be because being part of the political party or social group fulfills fundamental needs, like the need for belonging, which supersede our need to search for truth." End quote. So as Mercer and Sperber state about argumentative theory, and as just stated above by Bavel, people may not necessarily be after the truth, but after arguments that support their views. Remember, Synthisophy is integrating the wisdoms of history, based on fact and truth, into present culture.